The stars looked peaceful that morning when Captain Lee Tae-min woke up on his ship. He had no idea that death was coming to his home system. The Wanderer floated quietly in space far from Earth, doing what it always did, watching and listening for trouble. Lee Tae-min was 35 years old and had been flying ships since he was 18. His black hair was getting some gray streaks, and his face showed the lines of someone who had seen too much space. He liked his job because it was usually quiet. Most days nothing happened. Today would not be one of those days. "Captain," called Navigator Park So-jin from her station. She was young, maybe 25, with bright eyes that missed nothing. "I'm picking up something strange on the long-range scanners." Lee Tae-min walked over to her station and looked at the screen. What he saw made his stomach feel cold. Hundreds of little dots were moving toward their solar system. No, not hundreds. Thousands. "Are those ships?" he asked, even though he already knew the answer. Park So-jin nodded. Her face had gone pale. "Yes, sir. More ships than I've ever seen in one place. They're still far away, but they're coming here." Engineer Kim Do-hyun looked up from his workstation. He was a big man with strong hands and a gentle voice. "How many ships are we talking about?" "I count at least 700, Park So-jin said. "Maybe more. The computer is having trouble counting them all." Lee Tae-min felt his heart beat faster. 700 ships meant only one thing. The Valkyrian Empire was coming to destroy them. The Valkyrian Empire controlled most of the galaxy. They were stronger than humans, had better weapons, and never lost wars. They had been watching humanity for years, waiting for the right time to attack. It looked like that time had come. "Can you tell what kind of ships they are?" Lee Tae-min asked. Park So-jin worked on her computer for a few minutes. When she looked up, her face was white with fear. "Sir, these aren't just any ships. These are Valkyrian battle fleets. I see dreadnoughts, heavy cruisers, and lots of smaller attack ships." Kim Do-hyun whistled low. "A dreadnought can destroy a whole planet by itself. How many of those did you count?" "At least 200, Park So-jin whispered. The bridge went quiet. Everyone knew what this meant. The Valkyrian Empire had sent enough ships to destroy not just Earth, but every human colony in space. This wasn't going to be a small fight. This was going to be the end of everything. Lee Tae-min tried to stay calm, but his hands were shaking. "How long before they reach our outer colonies?" 3 days, Park So-jin said. "Maybe less if they speed up." 3 days. That wasn't much. Time to warn everyone and get ready for the biggest war in human history. "Kim Do-hyun, get our engines ready for maximum speed," Lee Tae-min ordered. "We need to get this information back to Earth Command as fast as possible." "Yes, sir," Kim Do-hyun said, running to his station. As the Wanderer turned toward Earth, Lee Tae-min thought about his family. His wife Jin-ae lived on Earth with their 2 children. His daughter Hyo-jin was starting school this year. His son Min-soo was only 3 years old. Would he ever see them again? The Valkyrian ships kept coming. Park So-jin kept counting and found even more ships hiding behind the big ones. Supply ships, troop carriers, and huge factory ships that could build new weapons while fighting. "This isn't just an attack," Lee Tae-min said to himself. "They're planning to stay and rule us forever." For 300 years, humans had been spreading to new planets and building colonies. They had always known that someday they might meet aliens who wanted to fight. But they had hoped to be ready when that day came. Now it looked like they had run out of time. The Valkyrian Empire was old and powerful. They had been conquering planets for thousands of years. Their ships were fast, and their weapons could destroy cities in seconds. Worst of all, they had never lost a war. Every species that fought them was either destroyed or made into slaves. But humans were different from other species the Valkyrians had fought. Humans were good at solving problems in new ways. They were good at fighting even when things looked hopeless. Most importantly, humans never gave up. As the Wanderer flew toward Earth, Lee Tae-min tried to intercept Valkyrian radio messages. What he heard made him feel sick. The Valkyrian commanders were talking about humans like they were bugs to be stepped on. They laughed about how easy this war would be. They made jokes about which human planets they would keep as vacation homes. One Valkyrian admiral said, "These humans barely know how to fly between planets. They will surrender after we destroy a few of their colonies." Another voice said, "I hope they try to fight. It has been years since we had a good battle. This will be more fun than target practice." Lee Tae-min turned off the radio. He had heard enough. The Valkyrians thought humans were weak and stupid. They thought this would be easy. Maybe they were right. Human ships were smaller and slower. Human weapons were not as powerful, but humans had one thing the Valkyrians didn't expect. They had tricks. Back on Earth, scientists had been working on secret projects for years. They had been building new kinds of ships and weapons that no one had ever seen before. Lee Tae-min didn't know much about these projects, but he had heard rumors. Some people said humans had learned how to bend space and time. Others said they had built ships that could disappear and reappear anywhere they wanted. Lee Tae-min had always thought these stories were just fantasy. But now, with the biggest alien fleet in history coming to destroy everything he loved, he hoped the stories were true. The Wanderer flew through space as fast as it could go. Behind them, the Valkyrian fleet kept getting closer to human space. In 3 days, the war would begin. Lee Tae-min just hoped humanity would be ready. As they flew, Park So-jin kept watching the enemy fleet. "Sir," she said, "there's something strange about how they're flying." "What do you mean?" Lee Tae-min asked. "They're not being careful at all. They're flying in straight lines, all bunched together. It's like they think no one can hurt them." Lee Tae-min smiled for the first time that day. Maybe the Valkyrians were about to learn that humans were not as helpless as they looked. Maybe this war would not be as easy as the aliens thought. But first, they had to warn Earth. They had to get ready. And they had to hope that human cleverness would be enough to beat Valkyrian strength. The stars no longer looked peaceful to Lee Tae-min. Now they looked like a battlefield where the future of humanity would be decided. In 3 days, everyone would know if humans deserved to keep their place in the galaxy. The Wanderer flew on through the darkness, carrying the most important message in human history. The Valkyrian fleet moved through space like a giant metal cloud. Admiral Kiros Thane stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Absolute Victory, and watched the human solar system grow larger on his screens. He was tall and proud, with gray skin, and 4 arms that marked him as a true Valkyrian warrior. He had conquered 47 worlds and never lost a single battle. "How much longer until we reach the first human colonies?" he asked his aide. 12 hours, Admiral," came the reply. "Our scouts report that the humans are trying to evacuate their outer planets, but they move too slowly. We will catch most of their ships still on the ground." Admiral Thane smiled with his sharp teeth. "Good. When word spreads about what happens, to the humans, other species will remember why they should not challenge the Empire." But something was wrong with the ship's sensors. The tactical officer, a young Valkyrian named Zextar, kept frowning at his screens. Admiral, Zextar said, I'm getting some strange readings from the inner system. What kind of readings? Admiral, Thane asked. Ships, sir. But they keep appearing and disappearing. One moment there are 3 contacts, then suddenly there are 12, then back to none. Admiral Thane looked at the screens himself. The readings made no sense. Ships don't just vanish and reappear like that. Check your equipment. These humans probably don't even have proper starships. But the strange readings kept happening. Other ships in the fleet started reporting the same thing. Phantom contacts that showed up for a few seconds, then disappeared completely. On one of the smaller Velcarian ships, Commander Yu-Ji Ho watched the same strange readings. But unlike the other Velcarians, Yu-Ji Ho was human. He had been captured as a child 20 years ago and raised by the Empire. They had made him into a soldier who fought his own kind. He looked Korean with black hair and dark eyes, but he wore the gray uniform of a Velcarian officer. Yu-Ji Ho had always felt strange about fighting humans, but he had never seen any choice. The Empire was too strong to fight. But now, looking at these impossible sensor readings, he began to wonder if maybe humans had been hiding some secrets. Commander Yu, his captain said, what do you think these phantom signals mean? Yu-Ji Ho stared at the screen. I don't know, sir. But humans are creative. Maybe they found a new way to hide their ships. Far away, hidden in a secret base, inside an asteroid, Dr. Choi Hai-wan put the finishing touches on humanity's greatest secret. She was a small woman with gray hair and tired eyes, but her mind was one of the brightest in human space. For 10 years, she had been working on something that would change war forever. Project Mirage is ready, she announced to her team. We can finally make our ships exist in multiple places at the same time. Her assistant, a young man named Park Jin-woo, looked confused. How is that possible? Dr. Choi smiled. Quantum physics. Our ships don't just hide from enemy sensors. They actually exist in several different locations until the moment we choose to attack. To the enemy, we look like ghosts. The science was complicated, but the idea was simple. By using quantum technology, human ships could be in many places at once. Enemy weapons couldn't hit them because they weren't really there, until they decided to be. Captain Shin Woo-jin was about to become the first person to test this new technology in real combat. His ship, the Ghost Walker, looked normal from the outside. But inside, it was full of quantum computers and strange machines that bent the laws of physics. Are you ready, Captain? Dr. Choi asked over the radio. Shin Woo-jin looked at his crew. They were all volunteers who knew they might die testing this untried technology. But they also knew that if it worked, it might save humanity. We're ready, he said. Let's see if we can become ghosts. He pressed a button, and everything changed. The stars outside looked different, like they were vibrating. His ship's instruments showed impossible readings. According to the sensors, the Ghost Walker was in 17 different places at the same time. It's working, shouted his engineer, Lee Min-ho. We're quantum tunneling through space-time. Back. On the Velcarian flagship, the strange readings were getting worse. Now Admiral Thane's sensors showed hundreds of human ships where there should only be empty space. This is impossible, Zextar said. Ships cannot just appear and disappear like this. But they were doing exactly that. One moment, the sensors showed a small human ship near Jupiter. The next moment, that same ship appeared to be near Mars, then near Earth, then in 3 places at once. Admiral Thane was starting to feel worried. In all his years of conquest, he had never seen anything like this. Are the humans using some kind of hologram technology? I don't think so, sir, Zextar replied. These readings show real ships with real mass, but they keep moving in ways that should be impossible. Commander Yu-Ji Ho listened to the reports and felt something he had not felt in years. Hope. Maybe his birth people were not as helpless as everyone thought. Maybe they had been preparing for this day in ways the Empire could never imagine. On the Ghost Walker, Captain Shin Woo-jin was learning how to control his phantom ship. When he thought about moving to a different location, the ship appeared there instantly. When he wanted to hide, the ship spread itself across multiple quantum states, making it impossible to target. This feels like magic, said his pilot, Kim Soo-jin. Are we still human? We're more than human now, Shin Woo-jin replied. We're quantum beings. The Velcarian fleet was getting closer to the first human colonies, but Admiral Thane was no longer confident about this mission. His sensors showed a swarm of phantom ships that seemed to multiply every time he looked at them. How many human ships are we facing? He asked. I can't tell, sir, Zextar admitted. The computer counts anywhere from 50 to 5,000, depending on the moment I check. Dr. Choi Hai-wan watched from her hidden base as more human ships activated their quantum drives. Each ship that came online appeared on enemy sensors as dozens of vessels. A single human fleet looked like an armada. The Velcarians have never fought an enemy that could bend reality, she said to her team. They're about to learn that humans don't just fight with weapons. We fight with the universe itself. Admiral Thane made a decision that would change the course of the war. Instead of charging ahead as planned, he ordered his fleet to slow down and form defensive positions. We don't know what we're facing, he told his officers. These humans have some kind of new technology that we don't understand. We will proceed carefully. For the first time in Velcarian history, an Imperial fleet was showing caution when facing humans. The phantom ships had done something that no amount of normal weapons could do. They had made the Empire afraid. Captain Shin Woo-jin received orders to begin the first test attack. He chose a small Velcarian scout ship that was flying ahead of the main fleet. Let's show them what ghosts can do, he said. The Ghost Walker appeared next to the enemy ship for just 1 second, long enough to fire a single shot, then vanished again. The Velcarian scout ship exploded, but its crew never saw what hit them. On the Velcarian flagship, Admiral Thane stared at the wreckage of his scout ship. According to sensors, it had been destroyed by a ship that wasn't there. Admiral, Zextar said quietly, maybe these humans are more dangerous than we thought. For the first time in his long career, Admiral Thane began to wonder if the Empire might lose a war. The first real battle began near Jupiter's largest moon. Admiral Song Min-ho stood on the bridge of his flagship Resilience and watched as the Velcarian fleet approached. He was 52 years old, with wise eyes and steady hands. He had spent his entire life preparing for this moment, even though he had hoped it would never come. How many enemy ships are we facing? He asked his tactical officer, Lieutenant Bae Soo-jin. Over 600 in the first wave, sir, she replied. Bae Soo-jin was young but brilliant, with quick fingers that danced over her control panels like a pianist. They're coming in the standard Velcarian attack formation, heavy ships in front, smaller ships protecting the flanks. Admiral Song nodded. The Velcarians always fought the same way because it had always worked for them. They used their bigger, stronger ships to smash through enemy lines while their smaller ships cleaned up whatever was left. It was simple, brutal, and effective, but today they were fighting an enemy that didn't follow the normal rules of war. Activate the quantum drives on all ships, Admiral Song ordered. "It's time to show these aliens how humans really fight." Across the human fleet, 37 ships shimmered and seemed to multiply. Each ship, using quantum technology, appeared on Valkyrian sensors as dozens of vessels in slightly different locations. To the enemy, it looked like the small human fleet had suddenly become a massive armada. Captain Shin Woo-jin was leading the first attack group in his phantom ship Ghost, Walker. He had learned to love the feeling of quantum flight, the way his ship could be everywhere and nowhere at the same time. "Remember," he told his squadron over the radio, "we don't fight like normal ships. We are ghosts. We appear, we strike, we vanish. The enemy can't hit what they can't predict." The Valkyrian fleet opened fire first. Thousands of energy beams and missiles streaked across space toward where they thought the human ships were. But the weapons passed through empty space. The phantom ships weren't quite there anymore. Admiral Kairos Thane watched in growing frustration as his weapons missed target after target. "How are they doing this?" he demanded. "Sir, our targeting computers can't lock onto them." "His weapons," officer reported. "Every time we aim at a ship, it appears to be in 3 different places. When we fire, we hit nothing." Commander Yu-Ji Ho, the human who served the Empire, watched the battle from his smaller ship. He felt a strange pride as he saw his birth people fighting in ways no one had ever imagined. They weren't trying to match Valkyrian strength with strength. Instead, they were using their minds to turn the battlefield into something completely new. The first quantum strike came without warning. Captain Kim Hana materialized her destroyer Phantom Strike directly behind a Valkyrian heavy cruiser, fired 3 quantum torpedoes into its engines, then vanished again before the enemy could. Return fire. The cruiser exploded in a ball of flame. "Direct hit!" Lieutenant Bae Soo-jin called out from the Resilience. "The Phantom Strike has destroyed the enemy cruiser domination." More human ships joined the attack. They appeared from impossible angles, struck with devastating precision, then disappeared before the Valkyrians could respond. It was like fighting shadows that could bite back. Captain Lim Jae-sung commanded the quantum frigate Spirit Dance. He had mastered the art of quantum combat, better than anyone except Captain Shin. He could make his ship appear to be in 12 places at once, confusing enemy gunners completely. "Watch this," he told his crew as he lined up an attack on a Valkyrian battleship. The Spirit Dance seemed to split into multiple copies of itself. Each copy attacked from a different direction. The Valkyrian battleship tried to defend against all the attacks, spinning in circles and firing wildly. But 11 of the attacking ships were just quantum echoes. Only one was real, and it slipped through the chaos to plant explosives on the battleship's hull. The battleship exploded, taking 300 Valkyrian crew members with it. Admiral Thane was beginning to panic. His fleet had lost 12 ships in the first hour of combat, and they hadn't managed to destroy a single human vessel. His weapons kept missing, his sensors showed impossible readings, and his crews were starting to talk about fighting demons instead of mortals. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "the crew of the Thunderlord is reporting that human ships are appearing inside their shields. That should be impossible." "Everything about this battle is impossible," Admiral Thane replied grimly. He was right. Captain Oh Mi-young had just proved that quantum ships could do more than just appear and disappear. Her small corvette phase shift had used quantum tunneling to pass directly through the Thunderlord's shield generators. She appeared inside the enemy ship's defensive barrier, fired a spread of missiles at point-blank range, then quantum jumped away before the explosion could catch her. The Thunderlord, one of the Empire's most powerful warships, was crippled in seconds by a human ship that was barely larger than a shuttle. Admiral Song Min-ho watched the battle from his command center and allowed himself a small smile. The quantum technology was working even better than the scientists had hoped. But he knew this was just the beginning. The Valkyrians had brought enough ships to destroy 100 human fleets. They could afford to lose some ships while they figured out how to fight back. "Don't get overconfident," he warned his officers. "The enemy will adapt. They always do." He was right to be worried. On the Valkyrian flagship, Admiral Thane was already working on new tactics. If he couldn't target the human ships directly, maybe he could find another way to hurt them. "Order all ships to stop trying to hit individual targets," he commanded. "Instead, fill entire areas of space with weapons fire. If the humans are everywhere at once, then we'll shoot everywhere at once." The Valkyrian fleet changed its tactics. Instead of precise shots at specific targets, they began firing massive waves of energy in all directions. Space around Jupiter became a storm of deadly radiation and explosions. Some of the quantum shots hit their mark. The human ship Whisper took a direct hit while materializing for an attack. The ship and its crew of 18 vanished in a flash of light. Captain Shin Woo-jin felt the loss like a physical blow. The Whisper had been part of his squadron, and its captain, Lee Sun-mi, had been a friend since flight school. "They're learning how to fight us," he reported to Admiral Song. "We need to adapt too, or we'll lose more ships." The battle evolved into a deadly dance. Human ships appeared and vanished like ghosts, striking at enemy vessels before fading away. Valkyrian ships filled space with weapons fire, hoping to catch the phantoms when they became solid enough to attack. Lieutenant Bae Soo-jin coordinated the quantum targeting systems from the Resilience. Her job was to calculate the exact moment when each phantom ship would become real enough to fire its weapons, then make sure that moment happened when the ship was in the perfect position to hurt the enemy. It was incredibly complex work that required split-second timing. One mistake could send a human ship materializing inside an asteroid or in the middle of a Valkyrian weapons barrage. "Target the enemy flagship," Admiral Song ordered. "If we can take out their commander, the rest of their fleet might fall apart." Captain Shin Woo-jin accepted the mission. The Ghost Walker began moving toward the massive Valkyrian flagship Absolute Victory. But as he got closer, the enemy fire became thicker and more dangerous. "Sir," his pilot Kim Soo-jin called out, "there's too much weapons fire. I can't find a safe approach vector." Shin Woo-jin studied the situation. The Valkyrian flagship was surrounded by dozens of smaller ships, all firing in random patterns. Getting through that storm would require perfect timing and a lot of luck. Then, "We won't approach it normally," he decided. "We'll quantum tunnel directly to their bridge." It was the most dangerous maneuver possible. If his calculations were wrong by even a tiny amount, his ship would materialize inside solid metal and be destroyed instantly. But if it worked, they could end this battle with one perfect strike. The Ghost Walker began to fade from normal space-time. For a moment that lasted forever, the ship existed everywhere and nowhere at once. Then it snapped back into reality just 50 meters from the bridge of the Absolute Victory. Shin Woo-jin fired everything his ship had directly into the enemy command center. Quantum torpedoes and plasma beams tore through the flagship's armor and into its most vital systems. But Admiral Thane was tougher than expected. The Valkyrian flagship was badly damaged, but still fighting. And now, Shin Woo-jin was trapped inside the enemy formation, surrounded by angry alien warships that all wanted revenge. The real test of quantum warfare was about to begin. On the Velkarian homeworld of Corvaxis, High Overlord Zentar sat in his crystal throne and read battle reports that made no sense. He was ancient, even by Velkarian standards, with silver skin that showed his noble bloodline, and 6 arms that marked him as a being of ultimate power. For 3,000 years, he had ruled an empire that spanned half the galaxy. "Explain this to me again," he said to his military advisor, General Vexthor. "How does a fleet of 700 ships lose to 30 human vessels?" General Vexthor was nervous, which was unusual for a being who had conquered 200 worlds. "High Overlord, Admiral Thane reports that the humans have developed some kind of supernatural technology. Their ships appear to exist in multiple locations simultaneously." "Supernatural?" Zentar's voice was cold with anger. "Are you telling me that primitive humans have learned magic?" "Not magic, my lord, but something that our scientists cannot explain. The human ships phase in and out of reality. Our weapons cannot target them effectively." Zentar stood up from his throne. At full height, he was nearly 3 meters tall, and his presence filled the room with menace. "Humans are insects. They barely learned to fly between stars a few centuries ago. They do not have technology that surpasses ours." But the reports kept coming, and they all told the same impossible story. Human ships that could be in many places at once. Weapons that struck from empty space. Vessels that passed through solid matter like ghosts. Far away on Earth, Professor Kang Young-soo stood before the Human Defense Council and tried to explain how their quantum technology worked. He was a thin man with thick glasses who looked more like a librarian than a warrior. But his brain held the secrets that might save humanity. "The quantum drives don't just hide our ships," he explained to the generals and politicians. "They allow our vessels to exist in what we call superposition, multiple possible states at the same time." Defense Minister Park Hyo-jin looked confused. "Can you explain that in simpler terms?" Professor Kang pointed to a cat in a box on his table. "Imagine this cat is both alive and dead until you open the box to look. Our ships are both here and there until the moment they choose to attack. The enemy cannot target something that hasn't decided where it wants to be." Admiral Song Min-ho, who had returned from the Jupiter battle for this briefing, nodded in understanding. "It's like playing cards against someone who can change their hand after seeing yours." "Exactly," Professor Kang agreed. "But the technology has limits. Our ships can only maintain quantum superposition for short periods. And when they attack or take damage, they must become solid and real." Meanwhile, back at the battle near Jupiter, Captain Shin Woo-jin was learning about those limits the hard way. His ship Ghostwalker was trapped inside the Velkarian formation, taking damage from multiple directions. Each hit forced his quantum drive to stabilize, making him a solid target for a few crucial seconds. "Hull breach on Deck 3, his engineer Lee Min-ho called out. "We can't take much more of this." Shin Woo-jin made a desperate decision. "Emergency quantum jump, random coordinates." The Ghostwalker vanished from the middle of the enemy fleet and reappeared near the outer edge of the battle. They were safe. For the moment. But the ship was badly damaged. Admiral Thane watched the human ship escape and felt his anger growing. His flagship Absolute Victory was crippled, 30 of his ships were destroyed, and his enemies seemed to be made of living smoke. "Get me a communication link to High Command," he ordered. "I need to report that we are facing an enemy unlike anything in our experience." When the communication link opened, General Vexthor's face appeared on the screen. "Admiral Thane, why has your attack stalled? You should have destroyed the humans by now." "General, These humans are not what we expected, Thane replied carefully. They have developed technology that appears to violate the laws of physics. My fleet needs reinforcements and new tactics. General Vexthor looked skeptical. Are you telling me that Admiral Thane, conqueror of 47 worlds, is being defeated by primitive humans? I am telling you that these humans fight like demons, Thane answered. They appear from nowhere, strike without warning, and vanish before we can respond. Half my crew believes we are fighting spirits rather than flesh and blood. The conversation was interrupted by another report from the battle zone. Commander Yu-Ji Ho, the human who served the Empire, had been monitoring the quantum signatures of the human ships. What he discovered changed everything. Admiral, Yu-Ji Ho reported, I think I understand how the human technology works. They're using quantum mechanics to exist in multiple probability states, but there might be a way to counter it. Admiral. Thane grabbed onto this hope like a drowning man grabs a rope. Explain. The quantum effect requires enormous amounts of energy, Yu-Ji Ho said. If we can force the human ships to maintain their phantom state for extended periods, their power systems might overload. We need to make them keep running without giving them chances to rest and recharge. It was a clever plan from someone who understood both human technology and human psychology. Yu-Ji Ho had been raised by the Empire, but he was still human enough to think like one. Back on Earth, Dr. Choi Haiwan was monitoring the battle and had reached the same conclusion. The quantum drives were draining power faster than expected. Her phantom ships could only fight for short periods before needing to retreat and recharge. We need more efficient quantum cores, she told her research team. Our ships are running out of power too quickly. Her assistant, Park Jin-woo, looked worried. How long do our current ships have? Maybe 6 more hours of combat time before their quantum drives fail completely, Dr. Choi replied. After that, there'll be normal ships facing a vastly superior enemy force. The race was on. Could humanity improve their quantum technology before the Velcarians found a way to counter it? On the Velcarian homeworld, High Overlord Zentar was gathering his greatest military minds. If Admiral Thane was right about these phantom humans, then the Empire faced its first real challenge in 1,000 years. Bring me every scientist and war strategist in the Empire, he commanded. If the humans have learned to bend reality, then we must learn to break it. The Velcarian war machine began to turn its full attention to the human problem. Research facilities across the Empire started working on ways to detect and destroy quantum ships. The finest military minds began developing new tactics to fight an enemy that didn't follow normal rules. But they were fighting more than just technology. They were fighting the human spirit, the part of humanity that never gave up, never surrendered, and always found new ways to survive against impossible odds. Captain Kim Hana, commander of the Phantom Strike, understood this better than most. Her ship was running low on quantum energy, but she had one more mission to complete. A group of Velcarian supply ships was trying to reach the main fleet with fresh ammunition and repair materials. If we can destroy those supply ships, the enemy fleet will have to retreat or fight with damaged vessels, she told her crew. It's worth the risk. The Phantom Strike appeared among the supply convoy like a wolf among sheep. In 30 seconds of quantum-enhanced combat, she destroyed 4 supply ships and damaged 3 others before vanishing again. The Velcarian convoy commander sent a panicked message to Admiral Thane. We are under attack by ghost ships. They appear from nowhere and disappear like smoke. Our escorts cannot protect us. Admiral Thane realized that the humans weren't just using their phantom technology for direct combat. They were using it to strike at supply lines, communication relays, and isolated ships. The entire Valkyrian strategy was falling apart because they could no longer protect their support vessels. For the first time since the war began, Admiral Thane started to think about retreat. His fleet was stronger than the humans in direct combat, but they couldn't fight an enemy they couldn't catch or predict. On Earth, the Defense Council was meeting in emergency session. The reports from Jupiter were encouraging, but everyone knew this was just the first battle. The Valkyrians had thousands of ships across the galaxy. They could afford to lose a few hundred while they learned to counter human quantum technology. We need to use this advantage while we still have it, Defense Minister Park Hyo-jin said. If we wait too long, they'll find a way to beat our phantom ships. Admiral Song Min-ho agreed. We should launch attacks on multiple Valkyrian positions simultaneously, force them to spread their forces thin while they try to understand our technology. Professor Kang Young-soo was less optimistic. Our quantum cores are already running at maximum capacity. We can't build new phantom ships fast enough to match their production rate. The humans were winning the first battle, but they were still vastly outnumbered. They needed to find a way to turn their tactical advantage into strategic victory before the Empire's vast resources overwhelmed them. The next phase of the war would determine whether humanity's phantom warriors could save their species, or whether they had only delayed the inevitable conquest by the Valkyrian Empire. The order came at dawn, Earth time. Admiral Song Min-ho stood in the command center deep below the surface of Luna and watched as reports flowed in from across human space. The Valkyrian Empire was regrouping, bringing fresh fleets from 3 different sectors to crush humanity's phantom warriors once and for all. They're learning too fast, warned his intelligence officer, Colonel Han Seok-jin. Our spies report that Valkyrian scientists are working around the clock to develop countermeasures against quantum technology. Admiral Song nodded grimly. Han Seok-jin was a small, quiet man who looked like an accountant, but he ran the most effective spy network in human space. If he was worried, then the situation was serious. How long before they find a solution? Admiral Song asked. Weeks. Maybe days, Han Seok-jin replied. They're throwing resources at this problem like nothing we've ever seen. Every research facility in the Empire is working on ways to track and destroy phantom ships. Admiral Song made a decision that would define the war. Then we strike now, before they're ready. Send the order to all phantom squadrons. We're launching Operation Ghost Storm. Across human space, 37 quantum-enhanced ships received their orders. They would attack 15 different Valkyrian positions simultaneously, striking deep into Empire territory while the enemy was still confused and disorganized. Captain Lim Jae-sung received his orders aboard the destroyer Spectre. His target was the Valkyrian supply depot at Kepler Station, a massive facility that provided ammunition and spare parts to 3 entire Empire fleets. This is it, people, he told his crew of 42 volunteers. We're going deep into enemy territory with no backup and no way home except through them. Anyone who wants to transfer to a safer assignment can do so now. Nobody moved. His crew had trained for this mission for months, and they knew what was at stake. If they could cripple the Empire's supply network, it might give humanity enough time to build more phantom ships. The Spectre engaged its quantum drive and began the long journey into the heart of Valkyrian space. As they traveled, the ship existed in multiple probability states, making it impossible for enemy sensors to track their approach. Meanwhile, Captain Oh Mi-young was leading her own mission aboard the corvette Phase Shift. Her target was even more dangerous: the Valkyrian command ship Dominion, flagship of the Empire's 3rd battle fleet. Oh Mi-young was only 28 years old, but she had already mastered quantum combat better than pilots twice her age. She was small and quick, with sharp eyes that missed nothing and reflexes that let her pilot her ship through quantum states that would drive other people insane. How are you planning to attack a ship that's surrounded by 200 escorts? Her weapons officer, Lieutenant Park So-jin, asked. Oh Mi-young smiled. We don't attack from outside the formation. We attack from inside it. Her plan was audacious, beyond belief. The phase shift would use quantum tunneling to materialize inside the Dominion's hangar bay, fire everything they had at the ship's reactor core, then quantum jump away before the explosion could catch them. That's suicide, Park, So-jin said quietly. Maybe, Oh Mi-young agreed. But if we can destroy their flagship, their entire fleet will be thrown into chaos. Sometimes you have to take impossible risks to win impossible wars. The attack began at precisely 0800 hours, coordinated across 15 different star systems. Phantom ships materialized from empty space, struck their targets with devastating precision, then vanished before the enemy could respond. At Kepler Station, Captain Lim Jae-sung's Spectre appeared inside the station's defensive perimeter like a ghost walking through walls. The massive supply depot had shields that could stop anything, except ships that could tunnel through solid matter using quantum mechanics. Target the ammunition storage facilities, Lim Jae-sung ordered. If we can trigger a chain reaction, we can destroy the entire station. The Spectre fired quantum torpedoes directly into the station's magazines. Each torpedo phased through the outer hull before exploding inside the ammunition storage areas. Within seconds, the entire facility was consumed by a series of explosions. That could be seen from orbit. Thousands of Valkyrian workers died in the blast, along with enough military supplies to outfit 50 battleships. But Captain Lim felt no joy in the victory. War was ugly, even when you were fighting for the survival of your species. Across the galaxy, Oh Mi-young was beginning her own impossible mission. The phase shift approached the Valkyrian fleet in quantum superposition, existing as a probability, cloud rather than a solid object. I'm reading massive sensor activity, reported her navigator, Ensign Kim Do-hyun. They know something is coming, but they can't tell what or where. Oh Mi-young studied the enemy formation on her screens. The Dominion sat in the center of the fleet like a metal mountain, surrounded by concentric rings of escort ships. Getting to it would require perfect timing and incredible luck. Beginning quantum tunnel sequence, she announced. Everyone hold on. The phase shift began to fade from normal space-time. For a terrifying moment, the ship existed everywhere and nowhere at once. The crew felt like they were dissolving into pure energy, becoming one with the quantum foam that underlied all. Reality. Then they snapped back into existence inside the Dominion's main hangar bay. Alarms screamed throughout the massive Valkyrian ship. Security forces rushed toward the hangar, but Oh Mi-young had already launched her attack. Quantum torpedoes and plasma cannons fired at point-blank range into the ship's most vital systems. Direct hits on the reactor core, Park So-jin called. Out. The whole ship is going to blow. Oh Mi-young activated the emergency quantum jump just as the Dominion's reactor went critical. The phase shift vanished from inside the exploding flagship and reappeared in empty space, safe but badly shaken. Behind them, the pride of the Valkyrian Third Fleet died in a ball of nuclear fire. 2,000 enemy crew members perished in seconds, including Admiral Korthax, who had conquered 12 worlds for the Empire. The destruction of the Dominion sent shock waves through the entire Valkyrian fleet. Without their flagship and commanding admiral, the remaining ships fell into disarray. Some tried to continue their mission, others retreated to safer positions, and a few simply fled in panic. Commander Yu Ho watched the chaos from his own ship and felt a mixture of emotions he couldn't understand. Part of him was proud to see his birth people fighting so cleverly. But another part of him mourned for the Valkyrian crews who had treated him with kindness during his years of service to the Empire. War had no easy answers, even for those caught between two worlds. The phantom strikes were succeeding beyond anyone's hopes. Across 15 star systems, human ships had destroyed military bases, supply depots, communication centers, and command ships. The Valkyrian Empire's carefully organized war machine was falling into chaos as their support network collapsed. But the cost was high. 7 phantom ships had been lost in the attacks, along with their crews of dedicated volunteers. The quantum drives on the surviving ships were running dangerously low on power, and several had suffered damage that would take weeks to repair. Admiral Song received the battle reports in his command bunker and felt both pride and sorrow. The mission had succeeded, but too many good people had died to achieve it. The enemy will respond with everything they have, he warned his staff. We've hurt them badly, but we've also made them very angry. The next phase of this war will test us like nothing before. He was right to be concerned. On the Valkyrian homeworld, High Overlord Zentar was in a rage unlike anything his advisors had ever seen. In a single day, the humans had destroyed facilities that had taken decades to build and killed some of the Empire's finest military commanders. I want every ship in the Empire mobilized, he commanded. I want every weapon factory working at maximum capacity. These phantom humans have made this personal. General Vexthor tried to counsel patience. My lord, we should study their technology. More before. No! Zentar's roar echoed through the crystal chambers. They want to fight like demons? Then we will show them what real demons can do. Ready the Annihilation Fleet. The Annihilation Fleet was the Empire's ultimate weapon, a collection of planet-killer ships that had never been defeated in battle. It had not been deployed in over 500 years, not since the conquest of the Zephyrian Republic. If the Empire was bringing out its most terrible weapons, then the war was about to escalate beyond anything humanity had imagined. Back in human space, Dr. Choi Hee-won was working frantically to improve the quantum drives. The phantom strikes had proven that her technology could change the course of the war. But she needed to make it more efficient and reliable. We need ships that can maintain quantum superposition indefinitely, she told her research team. Right now, our phantom ships are more like expensive missiles. They can strike once, then they need hours to recharge. Her assistant, Park Jin-woo, looked exhausted from weeks of constant work. The power requirements are enormous. We might need to completely redesign our energy systems. Dr. Choi nodded. Then that's what we'll do. If the Valkyrians are bringing everything they have, then we need to become more than ghosts. We need to become something they can never catch, never predict, and never defeat. The order came at dawn, Earth time. Admiral Song Min-ho stood in the command center deep below the surface of Luna and watched as reports flowed in from across human space. The Valkyrian Empire was regrouping, bringing fresh fleets from 3 different sectors to crush humanity's phantom warriors once and for all. They're learning too fast, warned his intelligence officer, Colonel Han Seok-jin. Our spies report that Valkyrian scientists are working around the clock to develop countermeasures against quantum technology. Admiral Song nodded grimly. Han Seok-jin was a small, quiet man who looked like an accountant, but he ran the most effective spy network in human space. If he was worried, then the situation was serious. How long before they find a solution? Admiral Song asked. Weeks, maybe days, Han Seok-jin replied. They're throwing resources at this problem like nothing we've ever seen. Every research facility in the Empire is working on ways to track and destroy phantom ships. Admiral Song made a decision that would define the war. Then we strike now, before they're ready. Send the order to all phantom squadrons. We're launching Operation Ghost Storm. Across human space, 37 quantum-enhanced ships received their orders. They would attack 15 different Valkyrian positions simultaneously, striking deep into Empire territory while the enemy was still confused and disorganized. Captain Lim Jae-sung received his orders aboard the destroyer Spectre. His target was the Valkyrian supply depot at Kepler Station, a massive facility that provided ammunition and spare parts to 3 entire Empire fleets. This is it, people, he told his crew of 42 volunteers. We're going deep into enemy territory with no backup and no way home except through them. Anyone who wants to transfer to a safer assignment can do so now. Nobody moved. His crew had trained for this mission for months, and they knew what was at stake. If they could cripple the Empire's supply network, it might give humanity enough time to build more phantom ships. The Spectre engaged its quantum drive and began the long journey into the heart of Valkyrian space. As they traveled, the ship existed in multiple probability states, making it impossible for enemy sensors to track their approach. Meanwhile, Captain Oh Mi-young was leading her own mission aboard the corvette Phase Shift. Her target was even more dangerous: the Valkyrian command ship Dominion, flagship of the Empire's 3rd battle fleet. Oh Mi-young was only 28 years old, but she had already mastered quantum combat better than pilots twice her age. She was small and quick, with sharp eyes that missed nothing and reflexes that let her pilot her ship through quantum states that would drive other people insane. How are you planning to attack a ship that's surrounded by 200 escorts? Her weapons officer, Lieutenant Park So-jin, asked. Oh Mi-young smiled. We don't attack from outside the formation. We attack from inside it. Her plan was audacious, beyond belief. The phase shift would use quantum tunneling to materialize inside the Dominion's hangar bay, fire everything they had at the ship's reactor core, then quantum jump away before the explosion could catch them. That's suicide, Park, So-jin said quietly. Maybe, Oh Mi-young agreed. But if we can destroy their flagship, their entire fleet will be thrown into chaos. Sometimes you have to take impossible risks to win impossible wars. The attack began at precisely 0800 hours, coordinated across 15 different star systems. Phantom ships materialized from empty space, struck their targets with devastating precision, then vanished before the enemy could respond. At Kepler Station, Captain Lim Jae-sung's Spectre appeared inside the station's defensive perimeter like a ghost walking through walls. The massive supply depot had shields that could stop anything, except ships that could tunnel through solid matter using quantum mechanics. Target the ammunition storage facilities, Lim Jae-sung ordered. If we can trigger a chain reaction, we can destroy the entire station. The Spectre fired quantum torpedoes directly into the station's magazines. Each torpedo phased through the outer hull before exploding inside the ammunition storage areas. Within seconds, the entire facility was consumed by a series of explosions that could be seen from orbit. Thousands of Valkyrian workers died in the blast. along with enough military supplies to outfit 50 battleships. But Captain Lim felt no joy in the victory. War was ugly, even when you were fighting for the survival of your species. Across the galaxy, Oh Mi-young was beginning her own impossible mission. The phase shift approached the Valkyrian fleet in quantum superposition, existing as a probability, cloud rather than a solid object. "I'm reading massive sensor activity," reported her navigator, Ensign Kim Do-hyun. "They know something is coming, but they can't tell what or where." Oh Mi-young studied the enemy formation on her screens. The Dominion sat in the center of the fleet like a metal mountain, surrounded by concentric rings of escort ships. Getting to it would require perfect timing and incredible luck. "Beginning quantum tunnel sequence," she announced. "Everyone hold on." The phase shift began to fade from normal space-time. For a terrifying moment, the ship existed everywhere and nowhere at once. The crew felt like they were dissolving into pure energy, becoming one with the quantum foam that underlied all reality. Then they snapped back into existence inside the Dominion's main hangar bay. Alarms screamed throughout the massive Valkyrian ship. Security forces rushed toward the hangar, but Oh Mi-young had already launched her attack. Quantum torpedoes and plasma cannons fired at point-blank range into the ship's most vital systems. "Direct hits on the reactor core," Park So-jin called out. "The whole ship is going to blow." Oh Mi-young activated the emergency quantum jump just as the Dominion's reactor went critical. The phase shift vanished from inside the exploding flagship and reappeared in empty space, safe but badly shaken. Behind them, the pride of the Valkyrian Third Fleet died in a ball of nuclear fire. 2,000 enemy crew members perished in seconds, including Admiral Korthax, who had conquered 12 worlds for the Empire. The destruction of the Dominion sent shockwaves through the entire Valkyrian fleet. Without their flagship and commanding admiral, the remaining ships fell into disarray. Some tried to continue their mission, others retreated to safer positions, and a few simply fled in panic. Commander Yu Ji-ho watched the chaos from his own ship and felt a mixture of emotions he couldn't understand. Part of him was proud to see his birth people fighting so cleverly. But another part of him mourned for the Valkyrian crews who had treated him with kindness during his years of service to the Empire. War had no easy answers, even for those caught between two worlds. The phantom strikes were succeeding beyond anyone's hopes. Across 15 star systems, human ships had destroyed military bases, supply depots, communication centers, and command ships. The Valkyrian Empire's carefully organized war machine was falling into chaos as their support network collapsed. But the cost was high. 7 phantom ships had been lost in the attacks, along with their crews of dedicated volunteers. The quantum drives on the surviving ships were running dangerously low on power, and several had suffered damage that would take weeks to repair. Admiral Song received the battle reports in his command bunker and felt both pride and sorrow. The mission had succeeded, but too many good people had died to achieve it. "The enemy will respond with everything they have," he warned his staff. "We've hurt them badly, but we've also made them very angry. The next phase of this war will test us like nothing before." He was right to be concerned. On the Valkyrian homeworld, High Overlord Zentar was in a rage unlike anything his advisors had ever seen. In a single day, the humans had destroyed facilities that had taken decades to build and killed some of the Empire's finest military commanders. "I want every ship in the Empire mobilized," he commanded. I want every weapon factory working at maximum capacity. These phantom humans have made this personal. General Vexthor tried to counsel patience. My lord, we should study their technology. More before. No! Zentar's roar echoed through the crystal chambers. They want to fight like demons? Then we will show them what real demons can do. Ready the Annihilation Fleet. The Annihilation Fleet was the Empire's ultimate weapon, a collection of planet-killer ships that had never been defeated in battle. It had not been deployed in over 500 years, not since the conquest of the Zephyrian Republic. If the Empire was bringing out its most terrible weapons, then the war was about to escalate beyond anything humanity had imagined. Back in human space, Dr. Choi Hee-won was working frantically to improve the quantum drives. The Phantom Strikes had proven that her technology could change the course of the war. But she needed to make it more efficient and reliable. We need ships that can maintain quantum superposition indefinitely, she told her research team. Right now, our Phantom ships are more like expensive missiles. They can strike once, then they need hours to recharge. Her assistant, Park Jin-woo, looked exhausted from weeks of constant work. The power requirements are enormous. We might need to completely redesign our energy systems. Dr. Choi nodded. Then that's what we'll do. If the Velcarians are bringing everything they have, then we need to become more than ghosts. We need to become something they can never catch, never predict, and never defeat. Admiral Kiros Thane stood on the bridge of his crippled flagship and watched his fleet fall apart around him. In 3 days of fighting, he had lost over 400 ships to an enemy that seemed to be made of living shadow. His remaining vessels were damaged, demoralized, and running low on ammunition. Sir, his communications officer called out, the Thunderstrike is reporting another phantom attack. They say human ships appeared inside their shield perimeter and destroyed their main weapons array. Thane closed his 4 eyes and tried to think. For 40 years, he had been the Empire's greatest admiral. He had conquered worlds, destroyed fleets, and broken the spirits of entire species. But he had never fought an enemy like this. The humans didn't just hide from his ships. They attacked from impossible angles, struck from multiple directions at once, and vanished before his weapons could lock onto them. It was like fighting, smoke that could bite back. How many ships do we have left that are still combat effective? He asked his tactical officer. 237, sir, came the grim reply. But many of those are operating at reduced capacity due to damage. Less than half his original fleet remained. In the Empire's 3,000-year history, no admiral had ever suffered losses like this against such a small enemy force. Commander Yu Ji-ho approached the admiral's command station. The human who served the Empire looked tired and troubled. Sir, I've been analyzing the Phantom ship attack patterns. I think I understand their strategy. Explain, Thane ordered. They're not trying to destroy our entire fleet in direct combat, Yu Ji-ho said. They're targeting our support systems, supply ships, communication relays, repair facilities. They want to make it impossible for us to continue fighting, even if most of our combat ships survive. Thane realized that Yu Ji-ho was right. The humans weren't fighting like the other species the Empire had conquered. Those enemies had tried to match Velcarian strength with their own strength, and they had failed. But humans were fighting smart instead of hard. Another alarm sounded. This time it was the supply convoy bringing fresh ammunition from the rear. Captain Kim Hana had materialized her Phantom Strike in the middle of the convoy and was systematically destroying every transport ship. That's the 3rd supply convoy we've lost this week, the logistics officer reported. At this rate, we'll run out of quantum torpedoes within 2 days. Thane made a decision that would have been unthinkable a week ago. Send a message to all ships. We're pulling back to the outer system to regroup and await reinforcements. The bridge went silent. Valkyrian fleets didn't retreat. They advanced, until the enemy was crushed, no matter the cost. But this enemy couldn't be crushed because it couldn't be caught. Meanwhile, Colonel Han Seok-jin was leading humanity's first ground assault using quantum technology. His Marine battalion had been equipped with experimental quantum armor that worked like the ship drives. It allowed soldiers to exist in multiple probability states, making them nearly impossible to hit. Their target was the Valkyrian Command, center on Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. The facility coordinated enemy fleet movements throughout the entire solar system. If they could capture or destroy it, the remaining Valkyrian ships would be flying blind. Remember, Han Seok-jin told his Marines as their transport approached Europa, the quantum armor only works for short periods. When you attack, you become solid and vulnerable. Make every shot count. Sergeant Lee Min-soo checked his quantum. Rifle won last time. He was a big man with gentle eyes who had been a teacher before the war. Now he was about to become one of the first human soldiers to fight with technology that bent the laws of physics. "How does it feel to be a ghost, Sergeant?" asked Corporal Park Hae-jin, trying to lighten the mood. "Scary," Lee Min-soo replied honestly, "but not as scary as letting the Empire win." The human transport used its quantum drive to phase directly through Europa's defensive shields. The Valkyrian garrison never saw them coming until quantum-armored Marines began materializing inside their command bunkers. The battle for Europa was unlike anything in military history. Human soldiers appeared from thin air, fired their weapons, then vanished before the enemy could return fire. Valkyrian troops found themselves fighting an enemy that was everywhere and nowhere at once. Han Seok-jin led the assault on the main command center. His quantum armor allowed him to walk through solid walls and appear behind enemy positions. Within an hour, his Marines had captured the facility and its critical computer systems. "Send the data to our analysts immediately," he ordered. "Everything about Valkyrian fleet positions, supply routes, and communication codes." The captured intelligence revealed something that changed the entire war. The Valkyrians weren't just fighting humanity. They were also dealing with rebellions on 17 different worlds. Species that had been conquered decades ago were rising up, inspired by news of human phantom warriors who could defeat the invincible empire. Captain Ryu Nari, commander of the science vessel Quantum Dawn, was the first to realize what this meant. She had been analyzing captured Valkyrian communications and found references to slave uprisings across the galaxy. "Admiral," she reported to Song Min-ho, "the Empire is facing a galaxy-wide crisis. Our phantom attacks have convinced other species that the Valkyrians can be beaten." Admiral Song studied the intelligence reports with growing amazement. The Zephyrians were attacking Empire supply bases. The Crystalline Collective had destroyed 3 Valkyrian patrol fleets. The nomadic clans were raiding Empire colonies throughout the Outer Rim. "We didn't just hurt their fleet," he realized. "We broke the myth of Valkyrian invincibility. Half the galaxy is in revolt." Back on the Valkyrian flagship, Admiral Thane was receiving similar reports. His communications officer looked terrified as he read the latest messages from High Command. "Sir, we're receiving distress calls from the Altair sector, the Vega colonies, and the Centauri provinces. The subject species are in open rebellion. High Command is ordering all available fleets to return to Imperial space to restore order." Thane felt the weight of 3,000 years of Empire history pressing down on him. The Velcarians had ruled through fear and overwhelming force. But the humans had proven that the Empire could be defeated, and that knowledge was spreading like wildfire across the galaxy. "Sir," Yuji-Ho said quietly, "there's something else. I've been monitoring human communications, and they're preparing for another major offensive. More phantom ships are coming." As if summoned by his words, new contacts began appearing on the fleet sensors. Captain Shin Woo-jin was leading a reinforced squadron of quantum ships toward the retreating Velcarian fleet. His Ghost Walker had been repaired and upgraded with improved quantum drives that could maintain superposition for twice as long. "All ships, prepare for phantom engagement," Shin Woo-jin announced to his squadron. "The enemy is retreating, but we're not going to let them escape intact." The final battle for the Sol system began as phantom ships materialized throughout the Velcarian formation. But this time, the humans weren't just striking and running. They were hunting the retreating enemy like wolves pursuing wounded prey. Captain Oh-Mi Young, whose phase shift had destroyed the Dominion, led the attack on Thane's flagship. Her ship appeared directly above the Absolute Victory and fired quantum torpedoes into its already damaged hull. "That's for every world you've conquered," she said as her weapons tore through enemy armor. Admiral Thane watched his flagship's systems fail one by one. His engines were dead, his weapons were offline, and his shields were failing. Around him, the remainder of his fleet was being systematically destroyed by phantom ships that struck from impossible angles. "Sir," his communications officer said, "High Command is ordering immediate withdrawal from human space. All surviving ships are to return to the core worlds for reassignment." Thane looked at the tactical display one last time. Of his original 700 ships, fewer than 100 remained combat effective. The greatest fleet in Velcarian. History had been broken by 37 human vessels using technology that seemed like magic. "Signal the retreat," he ordered. "All ships, jump to hyperspace immediately. We're going home." The surviving Velcarian ships began disappearing into hyperspace, fleeing the solar system that had become their graveyard. For the first time in 3 millennia, a Velcarian invasion fleet was retreating in defeat. Admiral Song Min-ho watched the enemy withdrawal from his command center and allowed himself a moment of quiet satisfaction. They had done the impossible. A small human fleet had defeated the galaxy's greatest military power using nothing but cleverness, courage, and quantum physics. But he knew this was just the beginning. The Velcarians would be back with new weapons and new tactics. The war was far from over. Captain Lee Tae-min, whose reconnaissance mission had started everything, stood on the bridge of his rebuilt Wanderer and watched the last Velcarian ship disappear into hyperspace. His wife and children were safe, his people had survived, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Phantom War had taught the universe that even the strongest empire could fall to an enemy that refused to fight by conventional rules. Humanity had proven that sometimes the best way to win was not to be stronger than your enemy, but to be smarter. 1 year after the Battle of Seoul, Fleet Admiral Kim Hae-won stood on the bridge of the Quantum Command ship Ethereal and prepared to launch the largest coordinated military operation in galactic history. Around her, the most advanced Phantom ships ever built flickered in and out of visible reality like stars being born and dying in fast motion. Kim Hae-won was 43 years old and had earned her position through brilliance rather than politics. Her black hair was streaked with premature silver from the stress of commanding humanity's phantom fleets, but her dark eyes still burned with the fire that had driven her to become the youngest admiral in human history. "Admiral," reported her tactical officer, Commander Bei Su-jin. "All Phantom squadrons report ready for Operation Galaxy Storm. We have confirmed coordination with 87 allied species across the target zones." Kim Hai-won nodded. The plan was audacious beyond anything attempted before. Simultaneous attacks on 24 major Valkyrian strongholds, coordinated across 12 star systems, timed to the second to maximize psychological impact on the crumbling empire. "Remember," she announced to her fleet, "we are not just fighting for Earth anymore. We are fighting for every species that dreams of freedom. Today we prove that the age of empires built on fear and oppression is ending forever." The signal went out across the galaxy. In the Kepler system, Captain Shin Woo-jin led a squadron of improved Phantom ships toward the massive Valkyrian fortress of Kepler Prime. His Ghost Walker had been rebuilt with third-generation quantum drives that could maintain superposition indefinitely, making him truly untouchable by conventional weapons. "Target the planetary defense grid first," he ordered his pilots. "If we can take down their shields, our allied ground forces can begin liberation operations." The Ghost Walker and its escort ships materialized inside the fortress's defensive perimeter like vengeful spirits. Their quantum torpedoes phased through solid matter to strike at the power cores of shield generators and weapon platforms. Within minutes, the strongest Valkyrian fortress in the sector was defenseless. On the planet's surface, Zephyrian freedom fighters emerged from hidden caves and began their own phantom warfare. Their natural ability to phase shift through solid matter made them perfect guerrilla warriors. They appeared inside Valkyrian command bunkers, destroyed critical equipment, then vanished back into the planet's crystalline caves. Zefkala, the old miner who had inspired his people to rebel, led a team of saboteurs into the main communications center. "For 200 years we have been slaves," he told his followers. "Today we become phantoms like our human allies." The Zephyrians didn't have quantum technology, but they had something just as valuable: the ability to exist partially outside normal space-time. They walked through walls, struck at enemy soldiers who couldn't fight what they couldn't touch, and disappeared into dimensions the Valkyrians couldn't perceive. In the Altair system, the Crystalline Collective was launching their own phase of the coordinated attack. Crystal Lone had grown into a massive formation that could resonate through solid rock across an entire continent. When the Empire garrison received the signal to surrender, the voice seemed to come from the planet itself. "We are the world you stand upon." The harmonic message vibrated through every Valkyrian base simultaneously. "Leave now, or become part of the mineral structure you have defiled." The silicon-based beings didn't need ships to fight in space. They launched themselves, like living missiles, phasing through vacuum as easily as they moved through stone. Valkyrian vessels found themselves being attacked by crystalline entities that could survive in hard vacuum and strike from any direction. But the most spectacular assault was happening in the Vega system, where Captain Oh Mi-young had been given command of the experimental ship Quantum Wraith. This vessel represented the pinnacle of human phantom technology. It could exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously and strike targets across vast distances without ever appearing in normal space. "Beginning multi-dimensional strike sequence," Oh Mi-young announced to her crew. Around them, reality itself seemed to bend and twist as the ship prepared to attack 12 different Valkyrian positions at once. The Quantum Wraith fired weapons, that existed in parallel universes, striking targets that were separated by light years but connected through quantum entanglement. Valkyrian ships across the entire system exploded simultaneously, destroyed by attacks that came from everywhere and nowhere. On the Valkyrian homeworld of Corvaxis, High Overlord Zentar watched the coordinated assault with growing horror. His crystal throne room was filled with frantic reports from across the Empire. "My lord," General Vexthor reported with barely controlled panic, "we are under attack in 24 systems simultaneously. The Phantom forces are using new technology that our weapons cannot counter." "How many ships have we lost?" Zentar demanded. "Over 300 in the first hour, my lord, and the attacks are accelerating. Our remaining fleets report fighting enemies that exist in multiple dimensions at once." Zentar realized that the Empire was facing something beyond mere military defeat. The humans had evolved their phantom warfare into something that challenged the basic laws of physics. They weren't just better warriors. They had become something transcendent. Back in human space, Director Park Jin-woo was coordinating support for allied species across the galaxy. His command center had become the nerve center of a revolution that spanned thousands of light years. "The nomadic clans have liberated the Proxima colonies," he reported to Admiral Kim Hae-won. "The Aryans have driven Empire forces from 3 gas giant systems. The Depth Walkers have captured the entire Aquatica sector. But the most important victory was happening on a small world called Haven, where former Valkyrian slaves were using human-taught phantom tactics to free their own. People. Colonel Han Seok-jin had been training refugee populations in quantum guerrilla warfare for months. His students included beings from dozens of different species, all united by their desire for freedom and their willingness to fight like ghosts. "Today you stop being victims," he told a mixed group of Zephyrians, Sylvans, and former human prisoners. "Today you become phantom warriors fighting for your own liberation." The assault on Haven was led by Yu Ji-ho, the human who had served the Empire for 20 years. But he was no longer wearing a Valkyrian uniform. He had finally chosen sides in the war between freedom and oppression. "This is Commander Yu Ji-ho to all Valkyrian forces on Haven," he broadcast on open channels. "I am a human, fighting for my people and our allies. You have exactly 1 hour to evacuate this world before we begin liberation operations." The Valkyrian garrison commander, Admiral Torkex, responded with typical Empire arrogance. "You are a traitor fighting alongside terrorist phantoms. The Empire does not negotiate with criminals." Yu Ji-ho smiled grimly. "Then you'll learn why. The Empire is losing this war. Phantom forces, begin the attack." What happened next would be remembered as the Battle of 3 Realities. Human quantum ships attacked from normal space while allied phantom warriors struck from parallel dimensions. The Valkyrian defenders found themselves fighting enemies that existed on multiple levels of reality simultaneously. The battle was over in 30 minutes. The Valkyrian garrison surrendered when they realized they were fighting ghosts that could hurt them but couldn't be hurt in return. As news of the coordinated victories spread, something unprecedented happened. Valkyrian units across the galaxy began surrendering without a fight. The psychological impact of phantom warfare had finally broken the Empire's will to resist. Admiral Thane, the former commander of the Sol invasion fleet, sent a message to Fleet Admiral Kim Hae-won from his damaged flagship. "Admiral," his transmission began, "I formally request terms for the surrender of all Valkyrian forces under my command. The Empire's war against your Phantom Alliance is unwinnable. We cannot Fight enemies that exist beyond our understanding of reality. Kim Hae-won considered the request carefully. The easy thing would be to demand unconditional surrender and the execution of all Imperial commanders. But that would make humanity no better than the empire they had defeated. "Admiral Thane," she replied, "we accept your surrender on the condition that all Valkyrian forces immediately withdraw from occupied worlds and recognize the independence of all species in rebellion against the Empire. War crimes will be investigated by a joint tribunal, but we seek justice, not revenge." The formal end of the Valkyrian Empire came not with a massive battle, but with a quiet ceremony on the neutral world of Meridian Station. High Overlord Zentar, looking ancient and defeated, signed the Treaty of Galactic Liberation. "The Empire acknowledges the independence of all rebel worlds," the treaty read. "Valkyrian forces will withdraw to the core systems and renounce all claims to conquered territories. The Phantom Alliance is recognized as the legitimate representative of free species in this galaxy." Captain Lee Tae-min, whose reconnaissance mission had started the entire war, was chosen to represent humanity at the ceremony. As he watched the once mighty High Overlord sign away 3,000 years of imperial rule, he thought about his family back on Earth and all the